to people that I'm a great rapper. You know what's funny about that whole prove you're a great rapper thing? And therapy helped me with this. You got to be real careful with playing games that never garner results. Like, M is one of the best rappers in the world, arguably one of the best rappers ever, right? Right this second, he's trying to prove to people that he can rap. Like, the great rappers are going to always be in a position where they have to prove they're trying to rap. The niggas that make hits are going to always be, you can put out 30 hits in a row. The second that you don't have a hit, the second you don't produce one, I'm preaching right now. I got to save this for the podcast. All right, Instagram is kicking me off of here in 1 minute and 30 seconds. That's 90 seconds total anyway. Yeah, so what's going to happen? Look at Lyric. Lyric, I got you, man. Don't give away the content. That's what Spotify's saying. Yeah, I'm going to save this for the podcast. This is going to be a really, really, really good podcast. It's going to be a really, 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 really good State of the Culture show this week. I got a lot of points to get out. A lot to talk about. I have a lot of different opinions about all of this stuff going on. And I'm sure Remy does too. Yeah, fuck them. Motherfuckers. Hey, if anybody wanted Joe to respond to them in a rap, all they had to do was say Joe's name 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Like, don't do it now. I'm chilling now. Shit, it's over now.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? It is your guy, Marcus Flowers, a.k.a. One Marcus Flowers, a.k.a. Flo, a.k.a. Call Me What You Want, Just Don't Call Me Lazy, and I'm here joined by my brother.
You know who it is. Momo Flowers at Metro Meta. Y'all know who it is.
You seem pretty excited today. Is there a reason for that?
Just living my life like it's golden.
Okay, this is Volume 1, Episode 6 of the Super Flow Bro podcast. And that is very important because if you're reading comic books, if you've ever read a series of comic books, issue 6 is the closing chapter of the comic. So basically, we're closing this chapter of the Super Flow Bro podcast. And that's remarkable. We've been going 6 weeks straight, very consistent. We want to continue to give you guys consistency. We have a bunch of content coming out this week. We will talk about that towards the end of the podcast. Make sure you are following me on all social platforms at One Marcus Flowers. Make sure you're following Morgan on Twitter at MetroMeta2648. And make sure you're following us on Facebook at 26th and Glencoe Media, on Instagram at 26th and Glencoe, and on Twitter at 26th and G. And you want to just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we're kicking off with the front porch. And we're starting off with Microsoft launching iPhone-like service for the Xbox One. How do you feel about that?
This is very interesting. When I saw it, it's so interesting. Basically, for those of you guys who don't know, what Microsoft is doing is that now you can go into their store and you can get on a payment plan for an Xbox One, and with it you get an Xbox One, One X, it's Xbox One X or Xbox Slim, depending on how much you want to pay, and you get Xbox Live, and you get Games Pass. So it's a great idea, especially for people who don't have a lot of money. It's very interesting. It's an interesting shift from what consoles traditionally are sold as. And it's very much Microsoft showing how they want to turn games from being console to console to more of a service.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. They're doing it a lot, like you're paying off a car payment, basically. And so, like, I think it's a good idea. I'm not too high on the Xbox One just because I don't really like the gameplay and they don't have a lot of games. But I think this is great.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know why they're launching this now, considering we're at the tail end of a very long generation. Like the next generation of consoles is coming out next 2 years, is what the rumors are saying.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they maneuver coming up with this upcoming generation of consoles. All right, so moving on, we are. Have you heard about Jemele Hill?
I have not. What happened to him?
Okay, so ESPN journalist and personality Jemele Hill, who she spoke out of, she called Trump a white supremacist, and she's been very advocate in voicing her support of Black Lives Matter and police reform and immigration and other situations of that nature. She is leaving ESPN at the beginning of September, according to media reporter James Miller. And ESPN bought out her reported $2.5 million per year contract, and it ends the long-standing relationship between Hill and the network. And just to give you a little backstory, so Jemele Hill came on at ESPN. I want to say about 7 years ago. I'm not too sure. With the His and Her His and Her show with Michael Smith, and then from there they got promoted to Sports Center at 6 p.m. And that's basically the flagship show of ESPN. But because they are black and they are African Americans, and in this climate, of course they slightly breezed upon like President Trump and different cultural aspects. And ESPN recently got a new president, and he wants to get less politicized with ESPN, which is kind of like impossible when it comes to sports because politics and sports basically go hand in hand. But and so Jemele Hill saw the writing on the wall, and she ESPN bought out her contract, and she's getting a reported $6 million. So and she also has a production company with Kelly Carter, who also works at ESPN. And so I'm looking excited to see the content and everything that they produce there.
Yeah, definitely. It's like no slide off her back. She's gonna be fine. She now has an audience. She has $6 million to start up her own company, plus investors and stuff like that. She's gonna be fine. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. Okay, so moving on. Do you know about NBA legend Manu Ginobili retiring?
I just heard about this. So he basically said like he's just done now. Like how old is he?
He just turned 41, and so he's been in the league like forever, at least like as long as I want to say like 98. Oh, my bad. I want to say like he was in the league like 98, 99. Um, but he says about his retirement, I can't say this was a hasty or unexpected decision. I'm 41 years old. I've been stretching a little bit this basketball thing, right? In my head, last season was at all times the last one. I've never said it publicly because I didn't want to limit my options. I wanted to leave the door open for any changes in my mind or to see if I still felt the physical and mental strength needed to face a new season. I was sure to make it clear to Spurs coach Greg Popovich, this is not a goodbye. I'll see you, he added. My kids have already started school, and while I'm in town, I'll be close to the team and to the franchise. I can't help anymore by taking a charge or with the steal, but I'll try to contribute somehow. I appreciate all my teammates, the staff, and all the people on the team. I want the best for the Spurs if I can. I will do it with pleasure. And this is interesting because the San Antonio Spurs have been in quite of a crisis this past year with the Kawhi Leonard situation and him basically demanding a trade, and he didn't want to play, and they like misdiagnosed. So there was already a lot of drama going on with that franchise, and I think it was very mature of Manu to just keep his opinion to himself for now, because that just would have been another burden for the franchise to handle. And he's still going to be working with the team in a limited capacity. So I think that's going to be great as well to help mentor the younger Spurs generations and instill the culture of being a San Antonio Spur.
Should be should be fun to see what he does next. Probably just take care of his kids.
Yep. Okay. So we are here at. I don't even know what to say about this.
I looked at this article and I couldn't make head or tails of this. I was like,
All
what is
right.
going on?
Okay. So Georgia Cat is homophobic, and have you heard of Georgia Cat?
I haven't, but there's so much in YouTube.
Okay, so she's basically a viral sensation, and she's like, "Moo, I'm a cow," and she cusses, "I'm a cow." But she had like when people get viral sensations, the first thing to do is to go through their past. So before we continue, if you've ever tweeted something that you don't want to be held accountable for, just pay the $8 and delete it. But she said,
Still lead the tweet.
yep, she said, I called a couple people F words when I was in high school in 2015. Does that mean I don't deserve support? Question mark. I've had F words I've said F word roughly like 15,000 times in my life. Does saying F word mean you hate gay people? Do I hate gay people? I don't think I hate gay. So we're in a climate of basically the cancel culture and just like shutting everybody off before like and not giving them a chance to rehabilitate themselves. And I will say, even though what she tweeted was stupid, I will say she said at the time she was in high school. So it doesn't excuse what she says, but it's like, okay, we can't hold everybody accountable for what they said when they were like 16 or 17. You feel me?
Of course, of course. And it comes to a point now to when we do have to ask ourselves, where is the limit? And they say actions are louder than words, but at a certain extent nowadays, it seems like people want you to be perfect from birth till when we heard about you. And it's not an obtainable view, and I think that's something we need to think about is that oftentimes now stars are held to a standard in which they have to live up to everything everybody else believes, which isn't always going to be true. Not all female actors are going to be feminists. Not all male actors are going to be perfect at all times. And I think at some point we're going to have to make concessions and say, well, maybe they might not believe what we believe.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I don't know how she can be able to grow from this, but I don't know, I just think as society we need to give people a chance to grow. Like we can't just so and so cancel them, but we need to give them a chance to grow and rehabilitate to prove that they are better than what they were a few years ago. Okay, moving on. So we actually, I just slid this in because it wasn't in the notes like I told you to put. Um, but so did you hear about what Luke Cage, Mike Coulter said this morning on Twitter?
Yeah, I didn't get this at all. I didn't
Okay,
get it.
so basically, at Aretha Franklin's funeral, rest in peace to the Queen of Soul. Um, the pastor was grabbing Ariana Grande, who just did a performance, and she had kind of a revealing dress. It wasn't too revealing; it was just a very short dress. And the pastor had his hand on her side boob while he was talking to her. And then there's a video circling around where he's basically like fondling her side boob. And then Mike Coulter retweeted the video that Trevor Noah posted, and he said, "What was up with the pastor's hand?" And then Mike Coulter said, "Now this, all caps, is how you shoot your shot!" Exclamation part, zero F's given. Crying emoji face, crying emoji face, crying emoji face. Now, this is a person that we can't cancel. Because Mike Coulter, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Coulter is 42 years old, which means he has been on this earth long enough to know what is the difference between right and wrong. And this isn't the first time that he's tweeted something like this. To be a superhero like Luke Cage, who comes off so woke, he's very shallow in real life. And I don't want to say it hurts me just because I didn't like Luke Cage. I thought it was. I couldn't even get through the first 3 episodes of season 2, but I just think that he just took it too far. Like he knows the difference. He knew what he was doing, and immediately as soon as he got backlash, he deleted the tweet. And I'm sure sometime in the future he will type out a iMessage note about I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, blah blah blah, I was just tripping.
Yeah, it's weird, but at the same time, what was the pastor doing? Like, why was he doing that?
Yeah, no, the pastor was absolutely wrong in what he was doing. And I also think I don't think we've seen it as much just because we grew up in a church that had female pastors. We didn't see that as much, but I know that has happened to certain people. Like even if you go to like churches in the South, that does happen with the creepy pastor getting hands on you with some of the younger, not consensuous, younger members of the church, younger female members of the church.
Yeah, I mean, one of the churches I went to, was like last year. They were having a sermon, and for some reason during the summer sermon, he was talking to the crowd, and many of the women in the crowd, multiple, like 5 or 6, admitted that either the pastor or like an important member of a church had made a pass at them, and like some of them were married. So there's definitely a problem in the church with this. Well, of course, there's a problem in the church always.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever gonna stop. I think because seeing the reaction to some people saying that that's just how pastors are, which is totally unacceptable because pastors should never take advantage of their position of power.
Yeah,
Okay,
it leads to mistrust and
yeah,
more.
definitely. Okay, so this is just ridiculous. Demi Lovato's drug dealer doing interviews. Now, I don't know about you, Morgan, but I know a few drug dealers, and they would never talk to TMZ.
Yeah, that it was just I saw that interview and I was just like, what is he doing? What? Like it's first of all, it's bad drug dealing. That's how you get caught in like the first place. Out here doing interviews, but just so for those of you guys who don't know, what happened was Demi Lovato's drug dealer did an interview with TMZ where he talked about the drugs that he gave Demi Lovato and the situation and all. And like the whole time, you're just like, first of all, you shouldn't be selling that sort of stuff. And he just sounded so like he didn't sound like he cared. Like he sounded like he was like, oh well. Like no, you sold a product that nearly killed one of your customers. And I think that's the problem with, of course, drug dealers. But it's still sick.
Yep. So Brandon Johnson, like that's crazy. I hope that's not his real name, but he told TMZ that Lovato texted him at 4 a.m. in the morning. She overdosed and asked him to come over. And Brandon said they watched detective shows together, and according to TMZ, were freebasing oxycodone, codone. Brandon also said that there was nothing out of the ordinary while he hung out with Demi. And he said she fell asleep around 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. and he left. So that's a whole hour difference right there. And then so he continued to place the blame on her. He said she 100% knew what she was taking. And I disclosed to her that these are not pharmaceutical. They're aftermarket pills. They're much stronger. And she fully understood, and it was unfortunate what happened. And yeah, so basically, and he continued, he said, when you mix fentanyl and oxycodone, you're putting 2 opioids together. And anytime you have more than one opioid or an increase of the dose, you increase your risk of overdose and having respiratory depression. That's what kills you. There's also no quality control at all with aftermarket pills. And there's no testing for contaminants, dosage, or anything. You don't know exactly what you're getting, and as a result, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So basically, this if like let's say like unfortunate that Demi Lovato passed away. This basically he would basically be an accessory to murder because he's basically admitting that he gave her the tools in order for her to kill herself.
Yeah, and just you know this is dangerous. You know you shouldn't be selling this. Why are you selling it?
Yeah.
It's like I know there's a market for it, but you have to have some sort of moral, some sort of line. And that's
Yeah.
why I don't see so
Yeah.
far.
Definitely. Okay, so moving on. Do you remember Avatar: The Last Airbender?
So I remember Avatar: The Last Airbender. Of course, I remember Avatar: The Last Airbender. One of the greatest shows ever put on television.
Okay, so great news for you. There will be a young adult book series that comes out in next summer, and it will be featuring Avatar Kiyoshi. And Kiyoshi was the longest living human avatar, and she was alive for about 230 years. And not only will it talk about her journey as an avatar, it will also expand the world of Avatar. And it is Abrams Children's Books has partnered with Nickelodeon to deliver a new young adult novel set in the world and will put a focus on a character which you've heard about but don't know that much of. And the novels will be released and have been written by F.C. Yee, who wrote The Epic Crush of Jenny Lowe, with plenty of consulting work by the co-creator of the series, Michael Dante DiMartino, to tell the story. And not only is Martino the co-creator, but he was also the executive producer on both The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra.
Yeah, this is definitely gonna be good. I heard the other Avatar. For those of you guys who don't know, after the series ended, they also released comics in the Avatar series. That's where you can find out what happened to Zuko's mother, if you're still wondering about that. But this is gonna be interesting. Also in this vein, the creators of Avatar: Last Airbender are releasing another cartoon series, Dragon Prince, on Netflix September 14th, and that looks really good.
Okay. And Senior Vice President and Publisher of Abram Children's Books, Andrew Smith, shared that we're thrilled to be partnering with Michael Dante DiMartino, Nickelodeon, and critically acclaimed author FCE to add to the canon of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Bringing Kiyoshi's previously untold story to life and original novels will be a major pop culture event, not only for fans of the show, but also for readers hungry for a new epic saga. The rise of Kiyoshi has all the hallmarks of what YA young adult readers love. Bold storytelling set in a rich landscape with a strong heroine at the forefront. So yeah, so make sure it comes out in July of 2019.
Should be good. Should really be good.
All right, so we're closing the door on the front porch, and we're about to get cooking in the kitchen. So let's kick it off with Verizon, with net neutrality, basically. So Verizon throttles firefighters' data speed, and people and supporters are blaming net neutrality. And this is a very serious issue, just because net neutrality is very important, and it's not surprising that Verizon would do something like this, just because at the end of the day, corporations put profit over people. But with California being in such like a state of emergency, it's kind of crazy that they would do this.
Yeah. I mean, this is the problem with net neutrality and why we had it in the first place. It's the fact that you can't trust these companies. And also, we don't, like, America has one of the worst internet infrastructures in the world. There's countries in Africa with faster internet than us. Like, they like, just just know you're still better than America in that regard. Like our infrastructure for internet is one of the worst in the world, and part of it is because of these companies who they built it and they refuse to upgrade it because it's working fine. And for them to get the gall to say, "Oh, now we're gonna throttle people because we can't deal with stuff," it's insulting at this point.
Yeah. So Broden, he's a firefighter operator. He said that the internet has become an essential tool in providing fire and emergency response, particularly for events like large fires, which require the rapid deployment and organization of thousands of personnel and hundreds of fire engines, aircraft, and bulldozers. And the throttle affected the OES 5262, a command and control vehicle that helps track and deploy firefighter resources around the state and country where there's the greatest need. In the midst of our response to the Mendocino complex fire. County Fire discovered the data connection of the OES 5262 was being throttled by Verizon, and data rates have been reduced to 1/200th or less than the previous speeds. These reduced speeds severely interfered with OES 5262's ability to function effectively. And the OES 5262 basically helps identify people who are in trouble or who need to be rescued and who in the affected areas. So it's very cynical that Verizon would do something like this. Verizon said that they didn't do it. It was a user error. One of their employees did it. But it goes to show that at the end of the day, people cannot trust these corporations, which was why net neutrality was in place. Because not only does it hamper like creatives and individual people and small businesses, it also affects like emergencies, which is why it was in place. And I don't think the FCC and Occupy really thought that through. They just wanted to please their suitors.
Yeah, they didn't think anything through.
Okay, next, it's happening. I think it's happening right now. We are recording on Saturday afternoon. John McCain died. Well, first of all, rest in peace to Senator. Well, it's kind of difficult. I guess rest in peace to Senator John McCain. It's been very hard for me to feel any type of remorse for a person like John McCain because he actively spent the last years of his life trying to make it hell for everybody else's. And John McCain was a politician who shot down MLK Day. He actively wanted to take away the Affordable Care Act. He was a proponent of climate change to a certain extent. He only was a proponent of climate change because his party didn't like climate change. And so that's how he's like a maverick, because he stood against his party. But the only reason why he stood against his party on an issue like climate change is so that he can get the spotlight. And I don't know if you saw this, but that clip of him defending Obama against a lady who said that he wasn't an Arab and he's a good man, he's a family man, he's a citizen. That's basically, even though he defended Obama, it was a dog whistle because he said he's a good man, and that's just like a slap in the face to Arabs just all over the world, because it's saying if you're an Arab, you can't be a good man, you can't be a citizen. And the only reason why he had to come and do that is because his vice president pick, Sarah Palin, was pushing that Obama was not American. And it angers me how we've lifted him to be just this like savant and just a savior when it comes to like American politics. But like, he doesn't have any true legislative victories. Like, you can't just point to the one thing that he did that made the United States a better place. Like, you can't be like, and even back to his climate change thing, when the Democrats proposed a climate change bill that was stronger than what he proposed, he voted against it. And he voted against the ACA. The only reason why the Affordable Care Act didn't pass this time was because Trump was mean to him. He didn't say no on the ACA repeal because he cared about the people. He said no because Trump is vindictive and McCain is vindictive, and that's why he said no. And I think it's been very interesting to see how the White House have reacted to this death, and how like they put the flags back up at full staff before they were supposed to. And it's just like seeing America turn to an authoritarian type of government, because there's rules that needs to be followed, and they're just like shrugging their shoulders like, oh, well, Trump didn't like him, so we're just going to let him do what he wants. And that is absolutely unacceptable.
It comes to the fact that now our country is basically in a Mean Girls movie. That's what politics is now. And I think part of the reason why people are lifting up John McCain is, for all the bad things he's done, he's still the best example of a Republican who was at least attempting to do something good. It shows to the shallowness and just to the detriment the Republican Party has become.
I wouldn't say he was trying to do anything good because he wasn't. He still voted with the Trump administration 9 out of 10 times. So it's not like he had the interest of people in like his mind. And for him to die of brain cancer, like that's like kind of like crazy because he pushed for like lower income Americans not to have access to healthcare. Like it's kind of like I don't want to call it poetic justice, but it's like you get the energy that you put out. And so when you've been actively attacking people through your legislation, through your votes throughout the years, it's gonna come back eventually.
Yeah, hopefully sooner than later.
Okay,
Right.
and now Dungeons and Dragons artist detained by ICE.
This was stupid. This was really stupid.
So basically, do you want to talk about this since you're more accustomed to this area?
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop game. It's really popular. It's very old, but they release new expansion packs and things like that. And the biggest part of Dungeons and Dragons is the artists. They draw people's characters and they really help build out the world. And a few Dungeons and Dragon artists were flying into America to go for a meeting to work and discuss different things about a new expansion, I think it was. And they were detained by ICE, and they were kept there for like 13 hours, and then they were sent back home, so they missed their meeting, and like their work visas and stuff got taken away now. And it speaks to like how detrimental Trump's policies are now, that people can't come to America to like do meetings, and it's gonna be detrimental to different companies. Like if you look at companies nowadays, a lot of their stuff might be worked overseas, and so now companies might be less hesitant to bring their artists and things to America, and it's extremely a big problem because have you ever watched a video called the World is Flat?
I have not.
For those of you guys who haven't seen it, it's by this economist. I can't remember his name, but it's called The World is Flat, and it's based on the premise that thanks to technology and the freedom of information and the internet, now companies can basically run their company wherever they want. And so if I'm the head of Dungeons and Dragons, I could have my headquarters in America, and I could have all my artists fly here, pay them, have them live in like a very expensive town like San Francisco, where they contribute a lot to the economy and give to like local businesses and make a bunch of hipsters and stuff. Or I could just have them all work from home in their own countries, and it'd be cheaper. And this globalization hurts, and things like this hurts America because it makes countries it makes them more hesitant to send their people to our country, and it means that they're going to be pulled away from going to America, not just for like meetings and stuff like that, but also to like events like Denver Comic Con, events like things like E3. Those big events, PAX, stuff like that. Those big events require people to fly in, and if I'm like a big person over at Ubisoft, where I do have an international corporation, I see a story like this, I say I can't send my employees to America because if one of my employees looks almost vaguely Arab, he's gonna get stopped, sent back, and it could derail an entire program. So instead, we could just go to Gamescom, or we could just do a live stream, and it limits our country, and it makes us look bad, like overall, around the world. And it's just like now other countries are just looking at me like, oh, so now America is just detaining artists for just looking vaguely Arab.
Yeah, and one of the cosplayers, Titus Luther, he described the experience. He said, "Here we were booked and checked into our jail cells. These are, as you can imagine, austere and not comfy. There were no beds, but we were given a blanket and some sanitation utensils. We would spend 11 hours here. We were fed and had access to water. To me, the whole experience was very traumatizing. In the morning, we were cuffed, put into transport, and escorted back to the airport where we would wait in uncertainty about our flight status. Some friendly personnel allowed us another phone call to let people know. After that, we were escorted by police to our gate for our flight, and our stuff would be returned to us upon arrival. And it's very sad that they've gone through this, but this is just the new reality that many immigrants have to go through while going through America. Like, there's a very high chance that you could be arrested or you could be detained for just not being from America.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
All right, rolling along. Have you been following this Logan Paul UFC situation?
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, so Logan.
So for those,
Oh, all right. Go ahead.
for those of you guys who don't know, Logan Paul was a Viner originally. That's what he used to do. And then when Vine shut down, he moved over to YouTube, and of course he had all those problems. And he, of course, got in a spat with KSI, who is an avid boxer. And KSI wanted him to box him. And Logan Paul and his brother, they used to do wrestling and athletic stuff like that. So they organized a boxing match, which KSI has done in the past, and it got a lot of views. It made a lot of money, and it made even more views on like the pirated cast. And afterwards, a lot of UFC fighters started coming out and saying like, well, Logan Paul was better at managing and promoting a fight than the UFC, and it even caused the UFC rep, president of UFC. The president of UFC predicted that the Conor McGregor and I can't pronounce his name.
Khabib.
Fight, Khabib fight will beat Logan Paul and bring in 2 million pay-per-view buys, which to me just speaks to the fact that their fight was so successful and they were just amateurs that now the president of UFC is having to come back and sort of quell people's fears about they're in that the two.
Well, the difference between Logan Paul's fight and the Conor McGregor Khabib fight is a $50 difference, and it may be like $99. So Logan Paul's it'd be like a $90 difference basically. But Logan Paul tweeted, "The thought of securing a fight in the UFC is exciting. Could finally use my wrestling background, but I hear some other celebrities, athletes want to catch these hands first." He also tweeted, "Technically, I'm undefeated, even though his fight was a draw. So I guess he is undefeated, but man, that was a terrible fight." So Sage Northcutt, who's around the same age as Logan Paul, he tweeted, "Let me know when you want to catch these hands. Punch emoji." And Logan Paul said, "Bring it on, North Butt." And so yeah, and then Sage Northcutt tweeted back, "It has begun." And basically, some background on Sage Northcutt. He's like 23, 22. I think he's around Jordan. He's 21. And he's a professional UFC fighter. He's like a good guy. He very Christian, comes from a Christian household, comes from a small town, I believe in like Ohio, with only like 400 people. And so other fighters, like you mentioned earlier, they're very pissed at Logan Paul for just saying that he can come into the UFC. Darren Till, who fights for the UFC welterweight championship against Tyron Woodley next week, he said, "Every day is hard as F. Every day is a little more harder on your physical and mental state. Then you get a cunt, coming along like this YouTuber fella thinking he can mix it in the UFC. F off, William mate, and don't embarrass our sport." And Luis Antonio Pena, he said, "Sage Northcutt is a punk B for calling out Logan Paul. Any fighter in the UFC calling or lobbying for that fight is a effing bum." And Chase Sherman, also a UFC person, said, "Bro, earn your S. Don't use your name to downgrade our sport. Fighters have worked all their lives to get where we are. Do the same." And it just goes to show that even though Logan Paul is successful and knows marketing when it comes to content and other things like that nature, there's still like a long road that you have to go through to get to UFC. Like you have to go through like the gyms and the training camps and the losses. And I don't think he quite understands it as a whole.
Here's the thing about Logan Paul is you have to go through that round if you want to go into the UFC and all that. But Logan Paul doesn't want to go to the UFC. Logan Paul just wants to make money. And you notice what happened was he called out anybody who wanted to fight him. Immediately somebody said they wanted to fight him. And then their whole entire background is now talking about it. Now this is what the UFC community is talking about, is Logan Paul fighting someone. He did the same thing when he called out Chris Brown, said he wanted to fight him. All Chris Brown's people say, let's fight. And he's doing a marketing trick where it doesn't matter where he is. What matters is how he's making his money and how he manipulates the community around him. Logan Paul doesn't want to be in the UFC. Logan Paul just wants to do a couple fights there.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's all my day off.
Damn, VG.
She say I'm the only one that can get it wet. I know that she lying, but I listen to that shit. And honestly, I just want some hit. I need you doing more and saying less. I'm about to run up a check, just having fun on flex. I need a new bitch. When I take a pic, I go with who do it the best. We on the block, I got my 9, then they got 1 in the head. If we can't get along with them niggas, then we gotta put on the rest. We gotta put them to bed. We gotta make sure they dead. And if they owe us a debt, we gotta go and collect. I got a family in need. I gotta make sure they fed. I gotta make sure they eat. It's been a week, I ain't slept.
I was just reaching out, bro, to see how you been doing, man, and I just wanted to talk to you. I'm proud of you. I know God is proud of you. And I know you got a lot more coming your way, man, a lot more success.
Run up a check, finesse. Run up a bet, let's flex. I got some shit on my chest, but I'd be wasting my breath. I know you're mad I left. I put your shit to the left. Shorty gon' say I'm a mess. Don't listen to what that bitch says. Either she work with the feds, or maybe she work with my ex. She sent a late night text, want me to come through for the sex. Diamonds all blue on my neck, I got a flow on my neck. I wanna get you and your friend, I can fit 2 in the vet. I ain't got no image to protect, I would rather be myself instead. I just wanna get a new Protect. These niggas act like they don't want no bread. I'm about to run up a check, just having fun on flex. I need a new bitch. When I take a pic, I go with who do it the best. We on the block, I got my 9, then they got 1 in the head. If we can't get along with them niggas, then we gotta put on the rest. We gotta put them to bed. We gotta make sure they dead. And if they owe us a debt, we gotta go and collect. I got a family in need. I gotta make sure they fed. I gotta make sure they eat. It's been a week, I ain't slept.
That's why God put you on this space to do better things and help other people, you know. God gave you the voice to try to get everything that you know about the places that we're in.
I never lose, and that's how you know I'm blessed. It's nothing new, I'm still winning, I just checked. They got the blues, I know I make them upset. In case they shoot, I keep a rocket on my desk. She say I'm the only one that could get it wet. I know that she lying, but I listen to that shit. And honestly, I just want some hit. I need you doing more and saying less. I heard you been around and that pussy stretched. She got an attitude, that pussy stressed. I'ma hit and act like we ain't never met. I got your message and I left that shit on red. I'm about to run up a check, just having fun on flex. I need a new bitch. When I take a pic, I go with who do it the best. We on the block, I got my 9, then they got 1 in the head. If we can't get along with them niggas, then we gotta put on the rest. We gotta put them to bed. We gotta make sure they dead. And if they owe us a debt, we gotta go and collect. I got a family in need. I gotta make sure they fed. I gotta make sure they eat. It's been a week I ain't slept.
Okay, so we are done cooking in the kitchen, and now we're bringing the meat to the dining room. You want to kick it off with Miss Marvel?
Yeah. As you know, I am an avid Miss Marvel Kamala Khan fan. I love her, and I'm very excited by her new comic book run, her new art, because she's going up against Shocker, who is traditionally a Spider-Man villain. And it's very interesting seeing this fight because Shocker very much talks about how New York is too crowded and there's too much stuff going on, and so now he's coming down here, and it leaves the door open to like what other villains are just gonna be like, you know what, we're tired of going to New York. Only one hero is fighting in New Jersey. Let's go take her down. And it's especially interesting for Miss Marvel because for those guys who don't know her weakness is electricity. Like, she gets shocked by electricity, and she basically can't, like, she gets really hurt. Like, she doesn't move at all. And so now you see her and her friend Bruno experimenting with her powers, both to find out her weakness and to basically work everything out. And her powers are on the fritz. So it's one of my... I'm very excited about this arc, especially with everything that's going on in her comics so far.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good run. Who's the writer on it? Is it still
I think it's still the same.
Willow? It's still Willow?
Yeah, I think so. Let me check.
Okay.
Gotta open up Comicsology. It's taking a little while. Go to the next one and I'll look it up.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, all right. Sorry, my bad. Louis C.K. and Kathy Griffin. So, do you know about what Louis C.K. has? What he committed?
Yeah, I know what he did. Yeah, it's the same person making hers. Yeah, I know what he came out on stage and did a surprise comedy.
Yeah. Do you know why he went away though?
Of course, I know why he went away because of the allegations and all of that.
So basically, if you don't know about what Louis C.K. did, he basically was accused of masturbating in front of women comics and just basically using his power to get ahead. Not get ahead, but just continue like dominating. So Kathy Griffin, who's also a comedian, who recently had her Netflix show canceled, she said about Louis C.K. About his comeback. She said, "Male comics don't never have these thoughts. They don't feel beaten down by the business. You'll never hear a successful male comic say that dealing with women in the business is just exhausting and that they have reached their limit, or that they're tired of years of having to beg to be treated the same as women, or that they've had enough of the emotional abuse. What I'm discussing in this thread can be applied to any industry." So Griffin talks about Louis C.K. and the crazy double standard that allows men to masturbate in front of non-consenting women and still find work, while women who cause out such toxic behavior risk being shunned, and why so many male comedians are so invested in Louis' ability to come back. And I just want to say, a lot of male comedians are watching this Louis C.K. Situation because Louis C.K. didn't really rehabilitate himself, like we mentioned people doing earlier. He just basically like took a vacation and he came back. And it's basically like business picked up as usual. And same too with the Me Too movement. Matt Lauer, he recently said that he's going to be back on TV soon again. And so it's going to show that the Me Too movement, there hasn't been any real consequences yet for the parties involved, the parties who have been accused, because it's basically going to be business as usual. And Kathy Griffin continues, she says, "You know how many women I know who have had their careers effectively ended because they asked for the same amount of money as a man who dared to make script suggestions on the show that they were working on? How quickly they were labeled as difficult and thus unhireable. Louis C.K. can go jerk off in front of women without their permission, and then his management destroys their careers, and he just gets to walk back in without any accounting for his behavior and what he's done to fix it. The boys club closes ranks and protects its own, and many men in the business want to see Louis C.K. come back because deep down inside they know that they've also done effed up s to women. She said they want to know that it's not going to hurt them on a permanent basis. Louis is their test case. And so that's very it's very jarring that women still have to deal with this stuff. Like, it's not surprising, but it's just like, it's very sad that women can't be as loud, they can't be as vocal as their male counterparts.
Yeah, it comes to the fact that there's always going to be, like, what I always say is that celebrity in Hollywood, it's a very poorly planned out, poorly laid out system. And I don't think it's a great system overall for how we should run things, and it leads to stuff like this and why people like Louis C.K. and people like that can just come back. There's definitely some changes that need to be done. I don't know if it will ever be done, though.
Yeah, I don't think it will be either. All right, and last on the dining room, we're talking about Comicsgate. So, I'll talk about it at first, and you can just chime in. So basically, with Comicsgate, a bunch of comics book creators came out and said, "This is wrong. This isn't. This isn't what we represent. We don't represent bigotry, racism. We don't want to stay to the status quo. We want to be able to expand. We want everybody to feel included." And basically, what Comicsgate is basically like Gamersgate. But Comicsgate basically wants comics to stay white, male dominated. They don't like to share. And so there has been a massive campaign throughout the past few years with like diversity in comics, and just other people, and they're trying to push forward an agenda that says comics are trading too fast. We want our old comics, we want our white male dominated comics back, and that's the only way comics should be. And these creators came out and said, "No, this is wrong. This is stupid. You guys need to stand up. You guys need to get with the picture."
Yeah, and it's a very difficult thing when dealing with things, especially when you're coming with nerd culture, things like comic books and video games deals with this a lot, is that there is a large community and a large portion of that audience that are the traditional white males who don't like diversity, and they are the like make America great again like group. And because of their like size, it can become difficult, and it can become, we'll talk about this more in like our other podcast, but like it can be daunting for like a corporation or even just individuals to make diversity-based content just because of this group of people. Like, Gamergate was a big thing, and it was a big problem. And nowadays, it's seen as it's basically just more of a problem than it is on both sides. Like,
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, but it's crazy because what Gamergate did was Gamergate helped get Trump supporters, basically. And I know that sounds like super crazy, but it's just like, the school to prison pipeline. It was basically that. So basically, they fed in through like gaming journalism. They fed into like, oh, we need games. We don't need this. We need white male dominated games again. And from there, it went from we need them in games. We need it in the United States. We need it worldwide. And it basically was like, that's what Trump did. That's what Trump embodied. So basically, it was basically a pipeline from Gamergate to Trump supporter. And they're trying to do the same thing with Comicsgate. It's not as intense now, but I like the way how these creators came out. It's not super early in the stages of Comicsgate, but they came out sooner than when they did for Gamersgate to try to tame this monster before it gets any bigger.
Yeah, and the problem, especially in the gaming community, when it comes to dealing with Gamersgate, is that the people who have to talk out about it, the people who have to discuss about it, are the people who are like behind it. Like, do you remember the story of Gamersgate?
I just know it. I know it briefly. I haven't done too much research about it. I know. I basically know bullet points.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't remember what happened, it was a couple of years ago, and what happened was some individuals had found out that a certain game developer, female game developer, was sleeping with media personalities and journalisms to get better reviews and to get them to talk about their games. And gamers got mad, and it came this huge thing and a more of a push towards not being able to trust women, especially in the gaming community. And so the problem whenever you bring up things like Gamergate is that you have this one problem that probably was sort of a problem that needed to be addressed. And then you have the gaming community, which doesn't like the gaming media at all anyway. They naturally just don't like them. They don't like IGN. Even some of them don't like the No from Rooster Teeth. They don't trust them. And then you have this white male dominated society, and it becomes a whole mess that mixes up together. I think one of the best things about Comicsgate is that it doesn't have that. There's no like core problem between the comic readers and the comic media and the comic creators, and it's just them trying to stand on the fact that they don't like diversity in comics, and it gives them a weaker argument. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be easier to snuff out.
Yeah, definitely. I do. Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. All right, moving on. We're at the end. Grand opening, grand closing. Did you know that Eminem dropped a new album?
I did. I heard about it.
Did you listen to it yet?
I did not.
Okay, so I don't. I don't know about you, but do you think Eminem has grown over the years?
I don't watch him that much.
Oh, okay. So basically, you know how Eminem came out just like super aggressive, super just super everything, super outlandish. He was homophobic, transphobic. He was, I don't want to, he wasn't racist because he couldn't be in hip hop, but he was just super out there. And over the years, how other artists have grown and matured, he continues to be the same. And on his latest album, Kamikaze, he continued to just he continued to be the same. He dissed. Here's a list of the people he dissed. He dissed Lil Pump, Joe Budden, Machine Gun Kelly, Donald Trump, Charlamagne the God, Tyler the Creator, and more. And I was taught, well, earlier, I don't want to say this year, last year when he dissed Trump and Trump didn't respond to him, he goes for a lot of shock value. And I'm trying to find the nope, my bad, sorry. I am trying to find the line where he disses Joe Budden. But it wasn't something that I don't think Joe Budden should take serious. Okay, so this is what he said. Okay, hang on. I found it. Okay, sorry guys. Okay. Still going. Oh, random. So people said he dissed Drake, but his manager came out and said he wasn't dissing Drake. So Eminem's.
I thought when I heard that line, I was like, that doesn't sound like a direct.
Yeah.
Talk.
Okay, so this is what Eminem said about Joe Budden. So basically, I will just give you guys a backstory. So previously a big fan, Budden has defended Eminem on a hip hop debate show Everyday Struggle, but this all changed last year when Budden describes Eminem's Untouchable, his last album, as trash, adding, "It's one of the worst songs I've ever heard," or it was a song. And Eminem said about Budden, he said, quote unquote, "Somebody tell Budden before I snap, he better fasten it or have his body baggage zipped. The closest thing he's had to his is smacking bees." So basically, Budden. So basically, Eminem brought up Joe Budden's domestic violence past, which is a very just as myself, that's a very it's a very like sticky situation just for me because I absolutely stand against domestic violence. I don't agree with it at all. And seeing Joe Budden's like basically his rebrand as a media person is still like kind of hard because there is like he's doing so many great things when it comes to content creation and media and like he's on Revolt now, he's on Spotify and just seeing all these great things, but he does have that domestic violence past regardless if the charges got dropped or not. It's like just because the charges are dropped doesn't mean that you didn't commit domestic violence. But Eminem just went after Joe Budden, and it was super surprising for me to see him go at Joe Budden because it seems like Eminem is just using his disses to stay relevant, and that's a lot of what he's always done. But it seems like now he's desperate in a way, like he has to say something about this, or else he'll just go by because he has to remain relevant. He has to rap about like Donald Trump, or else like people won't care about. He has to rap about mumble rap. He has to rap about Lil Pump. He has to rap about Drake. He has to rap about Charlamagne because if he's not talking about topics that happen today, it won't matter. And one of the key things why I'll never give Eminem to be I'll give him the greatest rapper of all time is just because his music does not age well. And so like something that what he said about Budden here, it won't be relevant 10 years from now. It won't be relevant 5 years from now. It probably won't be relevant at the end of this year. And so it's just a very sticky situation. Like I get what M was doing, trying to stress his frustrations about Budden because at one time Budden was signed to Shadyville. He was a part of Slaughterhouse. And so I'm sure M feels hurt. I'm sure Budden feels hurt because he looked up to him. And so that's just a sticky situation altogether.
And I think one of the main problems with Eminem is he talks about topical things, but the life he lives now is not like the life he used to have. Like he's not on the streets anymore, and he can still talk about what he used to go through. But it's the same thing with like comedians. Like Kevin Hart gets this a lot, where once you start getting more famous and you start getting money and start living a different life, it's hard for you to talk about and like connect with normal people.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, to be fair to the people he dissed, a lot of people said his last album was trash. Even Charlamagne said his last album.
Well, he did Charlamagne, so I mean.
Yeah, Charlamagne even said like his last album was trash. This one is better. This is why we told you your last album was trash.
Yeah, definitely. And so that was it. It's the end of the volume. Volume 1, episode 6 of the Super Flow Bros podcast. I'm very excited. Congratulations to you, Morgan. We made it to the end of a volume. I'm very excited about the future of 26 and Glencoe Media Network. We have some great things coming down the pipeline. Now that we're finished with the first volume, I don't know what I'm going to do. I may take them down. I may leave them up. I may just repackage them so that you can purchase them at a future date. I'm not too sure. But we have a we have a packed week coming up. So we have a Dust Off the Cartridge podcast, which is our video game podcast. That will be premiering sometime this week. Volume 1, Episode 2 of the Fantastic Flow podcast will be this week. And since I don't want you guys to suffer, I'll do it for you all again. It will be me reviewing the first season of Iron Fist in anticipation of when season 2 drops on Friday. The Meta podcast is coming out this week, Morgan.
Yeah.
Meta podcast is coming out this week. We have a few more shows coming down the pipeline this month. So just stay tuned. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms. It's one Marcus Flowers. Make sure you're following Morgan on Twitter at MetroMeta2648. Make sure you're following 26 and Glencoe on Facebook at 26 and Glencoe Media. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at 26 and G, and make sure you are following us on Instagram at 26 and Glencoe.
All right.
See y'all. Peace.